Hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Can You Really Think and Grow Rich? I'm Lanna Monday, and I am here with Ramy El-Batarawi. How are we, Ramy?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. And today, folks, we have a very serious topic that we are talking about. We're actually talking about an instance in Ramy's life that I dare say was very dark for a little while. And it's probably what he would define as being or hitting rock bottom, I believe is the way that you worded it in the book. So can you maybe talk to us a little bit about what you went through? Because a lot of people go through very dark times in their lives. And, you know, it's almost a time when they feel like that they could give up and stop. And you really had some heavy things going on. So share with us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, this was an important chapter also to show that there's that no alibi or excuse you can use to not succeed, because again I've hit it all. And so when we talked last chapter, we're talking about the battle with the government and also being on those antidepressants and stuff. So when the battle of the government was finally done, I wasn't off those antidepressants yet. And that script happy doctor just kept on writing more and more and more and wouldn't get me off for years. And he got to a point where he gave me so much that one night I actually overdosed and died. And there's a picture in the book of me being dead. I was dead for 20 minutes. And then I was on machines for the next 2 days, not knowing if I was going to live or not. So I did finally come out of it, and I was in the hospital for another 3 weeks. But that just shows that you can even come back from death. And then after coming out of the hospital, I still was addicted, but my mind wasn't thinking. And then I kept on losing more and more, to the point where I think the picture in there, I was totally homeless. There's a picture in that book also. I'm barefoot with my last $21 to my name.
Yeah.
And that was only 5-6 years ago. I just wanted to show how fast you could build up. So this book was about hitting rock bottom, and the last time that I went that broke. And because I was also on those antidepressants, I really believed that because I couldn't think the way I was thinking, that I had to get off of them. And doctors said, we got to wean you off slowly and everything. I just went cold turkey.
Yeah.
So for solid 3 months, it was a very brutal 3 months of not sleeping for weeks at a time. You know, people thought I was crazy. I was put into a mental institution 3 times during that period. So it was as bad as you can get in anybody's period of time. That's why that was rock bottom, from death to the streets to the mental institutions and having absolutely no money. But the good thing is that last time I was in is when it was about that 3-month period when I was getting off all my drugs. It was coming out of my system. And when it was coming out of my system, I went from the 2-cylinder right back to where I was 12. And my mind became totally clear. I was able to think the way I used to think when I was building all the wealth before. And I know there's a picture of a note. So I remember asking the nurse if I can just get a pad of paper and a pen, and because my mind was full of ideas, I was bottled up for so long, and I probably wrote about 100 pages, just couldn't stop all day, and I was there for like, I think, about 12 days in that place, and every single day I was writing and writing and writing after the 4th day, and that was my plan of how I was going to come back. I wrote that plan in that mental institution, how I was going to come back, when I was going to get my house back. And even that 6 months on the bottom was when I was going to get my house back.
That's what I found interesting. If you look down here, you can see it says 6 months.
Yeah, and I did get my house back that I lost in that 6 months. And I wrote down the different ideas and companies I was going to start. And I wrote down my goal was 5 years to achieve everything back that I lost. And it took maybe close to 6, but it was close to exactly what time, because I put in my mind, made it a burning desire, put a deadline, and then my mind was thinking the way it should. So that I go into the next chapter. But this chapter was about how bad things can be, and you can't use a single excuse, because if I had those excuses, from death to total poverty to being addicted to drugs, and still able to come back, then I don't think it's an excuse in the world anybody can use not to succeed. And that's why that chapter is extremely important for me to get to. That's why the book kind of leads into that. And I think the last part of the book is more important than even the first part, because it's not just the rags to riches, but this is really going totally broke and having so many adversities after the government, 7 years of fighting the government, dying, going to drugs, total poverty, and where I left off. That chapter leaves off where I just get out of that hospital with absolutely nothing and ready to attack the next chapter and how I was going to build everything back.
So you had so many different things that you were coping with, because you talk about your money.
Right.
And you were struggling with either trying to get off of the antidepressants and things like that. And then you had your health affect you. So it wasn't just one particular thing. You were actually down and out from a whole multitude of things, almost every facet, it sounds like, in your life.
Yeah. I mean, there was suicidal thoughts. There were a whole bunch of things. I mean, you couldn't get more lower than I got. And by the way, even when I was that low, I knew I was going to come back. And the only reason I have those pictures, I took those pictures on purpose because I knew I was going to write this book one day, and I knew I was going to come back, and people need proof. So I wanted to have proof of how bad it really was. And I took those pictures, and I have a whole bunch more pictures and videos I took during that period of time. So I could really document to show that I was as low as anybody can get, because when I did come back, then it would have been a powerful story of coming back from that depth of despair and poverty and everything else.
Would you attribute that to your confidence, or would you attribute that to perseverance, or many different things?
It's a lot of things, but even though when I was on those routes, still, because I made Think and Grow Rich my mindset, as that's the way I think, I don't even have to read it, it was still in back of my mind, even though it was buried on all those routes, I still knew that there's principles that worked, and I knew that people can succeed. I just knew that those were adversities that were all temporary. So it just was a confidence in myself that if I can just get back on track, get back to the way I could accomplish everything I wanted to. But I guess it was a journey I had to go through and come back to the other side. And every time, because this was not the first time I went broke. I've been broke and went homeless, 5 times before in that book, but every time I come back bigger and stronger. So I knew I was going to come back bigger and stronger again this time. So it was just at that point, I just really wanted to take people through a journey, because if I knew if I was going to write a book, I want them to understand the journey of life, because people go through it, and a lot of people I talk to and stuff, they can relate more to a lot of this because they're going through a lot of difficulty in their life, or the poverty, or the corona, or sickness, or anything like that, and they don't know how they'll ever get out of that rut. And I wanted to use my example to show people that they can. And I'm thinking there might be more extreme versions, I'm sure, but it was.
Oh no, yours is pretty extreme.
Yeah. So basically, it is really a really good chapter to understand and feel, and people to relate to, and to understand that, yeah, it wasn't this easy journey for me, or I have all this, and whoopee, I now have a plane and all that. I had to go through a lot, and I had to feel the pain of poverty, death, and everything else that had to come with it to and come back from it.
So it was very emotional for you.
Oh yeah, it was definitely very emotional and very desperate moments and stuff. And there was a few times I didn't believe in myself. I had lacked confidence. I didn't know, but then I always came back to it after I thought about it. I just knew that there was definitely a way out. Just had to get there.
So when you were at your very lowest, was it almost like a light switch went off and you said, oh, hey, I can actually get through this? Or was it gradual as you came off your antidepressants? Or what was that Eureka? Was it a Eureka moment, or was it?
Yeah. Well, during that period of time, it was like in back of my mind knowing. The Eureka moment was when I got off those drugs and I got clear. That was when I was 100% convinced, no way, no how, that I was not going to get back. Right. But during that whole period, it was just a lingering thought from all my experience of life, knowing that I will get past this. It's just temporary,
Right.
And so even when I had a suicidal thought here and there, that was a permanent problem, a permanent solution for a temporary problem.
Yeah.
And so I took that out of my mind
Right,
pretty
right.
quickly. But I knew it in back of my mind, and slowly, and then didn't come fully clear. The Eureka moment was the day I got totally clear, got off all that medication. I was able to think the way I was thinking. Then before I left hospital, I just knew 100%. There was not even a thought in my mind that I was not going to succeed after that.
And that's a wonderful thought too, to think that even though people, when they undergo negative circumstances and things, adversities, it is temporary. And a lot of people get so entrenched in it up here and emotionally that they have a hard time letting it go.
Yeah, and people get stuck in those ruts for the rest of their lives. That's why it's very important to read stuff like A Think and Grow Rich, or make part of it and look at it. And I mean, anything, even if you watch A Secret or anything that gives you enough to understand, because you'll get more of it. Just get more of the positive thing. Don't watch the news. I stopped watching the news totally when I was going through that, because it's all negative. So it was not going to help me. So I don't watch. I didn't look at things that are about negative stuff. And even when I was battling the government for 7 years, from the last chapter, I had 95% chance I was going to go to jail for 100 years. So I never watched movies about jail. I didn't watch. I wasn't going to feed into the thought and fear of anything that about it. Just a thought of just victory. So it's really avoid all the negative, focus on the positive, and then eventually your mind will shift and get there.
Yeah, and they talk about a lot that you bring about what you think about. Whatever you dwell on is what you bring to you. So I think when people are in those very dark times, they've got to find something to latch onto that's super positive. So what might be a way that they can condition their mind in a little more positive manner? What would be some advice?
Well, again, mine was because I started with Think and Grow Rich. And I still had a copy, so I would read that book. I read it 1,000 times by that time. I need to refresh my mind. So for me, it was reading that book over
repetition
and repetition and stuff, and then staying away from anything negative. That was my way of doing it. But other people, if they're reading this, if they haven't read The Think and Grow Rich, they have to. But it's a reinforcement, because you got to remember the feeling you had when you first read it, and how you felt that you can conquer the world and stuff, or if there's something else that's that positive. Go hang around people that are successful. Don't hang around people that are not. Like when I was homeless, every time I never went to Skid Row, hang around with other homeless people.
Right.
I went on my own, and I didn't want to be influenced by the way they were thinking.
Right.
Then it would become more permanent. So
and it's a very different mindset.
Yeah. It's all negative, and it's so much easier for negative thoughts to enter your mind than positive one. That takes an effort. So if you're really at rest mode, the negative comes in. So it's an effort to get the positive. So until it becomes just the way you think. But it is an effort. And if you're stuck in that rut, it's going to be a major effort to shift into a positive way of thinking and feeling that you can get out of that.
And some people too, I think, they don't necessarily feel comfortable right off doing that, like trying to be positive, because it's almost like they're pretending. But there's also something to be said for going back to what you were talking about with repetition. If you can force yourself to think more positive and find something positive, to look at long term versus the cloud that's right in front of you. And even if at first it doesn't necessarily seem real, the more you dwell on it, then the more realistic it becomes, the more you concentrate on it.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. Well, just as Ramy's talking about Think and Grow Rich, you need to read, if you haven't, Think and Grow Rich, and you need to read Ramy's book. Ramy's book, Can You Really Think and Grow Rich, is available on his website under the same name, Can You Really Think and Grow Rich. You can get a copy of his book, and you can also get a direct replica copy of the 1937 edition hardback of Think and Grow Rich. So some wonderful admonitions, some great advice for us all. We thank you so much for being here with us, Ramy. And I guess we will see you back on our next episode. Thanks for joining us, Ramy.
Thank you, Lana.
And thank you, everybody.